Hi there, it's me, MTG Rat Girl. With the Lorwyn pre-releases just barely behind our heels, you may be a little bit sad that you didn't pull that High Perfect Morcant for your perfect idealized elf commander deck. And I can't blame you. I love putting counters on creatures, and I love proliferating them. I don't care if the counters go on my creatures or my opponents. I just think we all deserve more of them. But as we all know, High Perfect Morcant is a very expensive card. And if you weren't lucky enough to pull one in a draft or a pre-release, you might feel a little bit of that FOMO from not spending $40 to $60 on a bunch of cardboard on pre-release weekend. Well, never fear, my beloved gamers, because we have something that's just as good, if not better. Rat Girl Studio presents Volrath's I Can't Believe It's Not Blight. That's right, you can have that same -1 counter kick at your home table without the price tag. Just pop Volrath into your command zone, wait 15 minutes, and pow! Instant value! Guaranteed or your money back. Volrath the Shapestealer is not an elf. It is only an elf substitute. Volrath the Shapestealer still contains dangerous amounts of -1 counters and proliferate ability. If you have a -1 counter lasting for more than 48 hours, please see a doctor or a judge at your local game store. Alright everybody, if you saw last week's video, then you'll know that I was on a little bit of a tear with all of the proliferate cards in black and green, and even blue, that could go into your new Lorwyn commander decks. Yeah, the blue was for this reason. I was getting a little ahead of myself, so, thanks for being patient with me. I do read the comments. You're all very nice. In this video, we are going to be sad that we didn't pull a High Perfect Morcant from our pre-release box. How did I know that was going to happen to me? I don't know. I just had a feeling. I don't have the best luck with opening pulls. If you follow me on Blue Sky, you'll know that I did the worst in my tournament as a result of barely opening any creatures. Anyway, that's in the past. So now we can focus on, instead of this disgustingly stupid sexy elf for just $1 and some change from your local game store, you can have Volrath the Shapestealer. He's not quite Blight, but he might as well be, with all of the new synergies that come from Lorwyn Eclipsed that are a little bit easier for you to come by. A lot of people play Volrath the way that I initially thought to play him, which is by putting a bunch of +1 counters on your own creatures so that you get to copy them and have a 7/5 version of them without the downside of slowly eating away at your own board. Well, we're not going to do that. This time, I'm not taking the easy road. I will not be building yet another +1 counters deck. I already have like 3. We are going to be forcing those -1 counters on your opponent's creatures, just like Morcant. This deck even has an additional color over Morcant, so at its ceiling, maybe you could even blow out the disgusting Golgari Elf Ball deck that is surely going to be terrorizing and pub stomping game stores around the world. So, Volrath's ability puts a -1 counter on a creature of your choice, yours or an opponent's, at the beginning of every combat. Then, for 1 mana, he loses the above ability, but he becomes a clone of any creature on the board with any kind of counter on it. And that lasts as long as your opponent's turns. So by the time your turn comes back around, he will regain his ability to blight other people's creatures. Now, a lot of you might be worried that with this -1 counter plan in mind, it might be easy to just turn this into a Hellish Dimir lock deck. That's not going to happen, hopefully. We are still a very creature-based strategy, so the main plan of the deck is just copy the best thing on board and beat your opponents to death with it, because your version of the best creature on board will always have 7 power. We are also going wide with some things of our own that would be nice to copy. We will get into that in a minute. First of all, let's talk about how Volrath can be the ultimate clone in your command zone. So you'll notice that if we read the text box of Discount Morcant, you'll see that he can copy anything with any kind of counter on it. It doesn't have to be a -1 counter at all. But we did get some pretty good pieces for putting -1 counters. From the Anti-Ul Blight deck, we got a reprint of Black Sun Zenith, which puts a +1 counter on each creature for just 3 mana. And if you need a board wipe, I guess you can use it for that too. Nicely, this also shuffles itself back into our library once we've used it. Contagion Engine comes down for 6 generic mana and puts a +1 counter on each creature target player controls, which means that you only have to punish the person who's furthest ahead by copying all of their things. This goes up well against any Gruul Stompy deck where you think, oh, I would really like that effect pumping my whole board and also make yours kind of smaller at the same time. From the basic Lorwyn Eclipsed set, we got Darkness Descends. For 4 mana, it can put 2 -1 counters on each creature on the board, meaning that Volrath can clone anything you want for just 1 mana. Illicit Masquerade does a similar thing as Contagion Engine, but for your own board, giving you a little bit of protection for your creatures, as well as turning Volrath into a copy of the best thing you have out. The last thing from Lorwyn that we're running in this category, putting counters on just about everything on the board, is Soul Snuffers, which also comes in the Anti-Ul Blight Precon. When it enters, you put a +1 counter on each creature, plus you get a 3/3 body to chump block or sacrifice later. Next up, we have Tolarian Contempt, which enters the battlefield, puts a rejection counter on every creature that your opponents control. Then, at the end of each one of your turns, you can choose the most problematic thing on board with this kind of counter on it and just pop it into your opponent's library. This is definitely one that you should sandbag for a long time until you think it's time to turn tide and start really disassembling your opponent's boards for a win. Vraska Joins Up also fits into our Sultai colors and gives each creature you control a Death Touch counter. This isn't all that great on its own, but it also fits into the plan of letting Volrath copy something evasive and get in for commander damage, because every time he or any other legend hits an opponent, you get to draw a card. Lastly, the weirdest bit of tech that we have in this deck is Liliana's Influence. We aren't using this to tutor the Liliana Planeswalker that it was printed with. We can just ignore everything after the first sentence. It's just 6 mana to let Volrath become a copy of anything you want. This would be first on my list for cutting things because it's a bit overpriced, but the Liliana that comes with it is also maybe worth including if you want to go that route. But if any other cheaper card is ever printed that says put a -1 counter on everything you don't control, that is getting slotted in here pretty fast. So with this collection of mass counter distribution, you can turn Volrath every single one of your turns into a Phyrexian Metamorph, a Flesh Duplicate, or a Phantasmal Image. And these are some of the most powerful cards in CEDH, at least when everyone is playing with a lot of high power. It's really funny that I keep having this idea with Sultai creatures that I just want to not have a ridiculous value pile like you would with Muldrotha or with Marlin, but to just keep up exactly on pace with what my opponents are doing. I guess it's just me having that mirroring instinct. Every time I cast a clone in a CEDH game, it feels amazing, so I want a way to be able to do that every single turn in casual as well. Next up, now that we've put all of these counters on everything that we can, we have to have some way to manipulate them to make them do exactly what is beneficial for us. Each one of these counters can potentially serve as a removal spell with certain pieces that you may have seen before on this channel. Having access to blue also gives us some really fun things that we can do with them as well. First up on the list, Agent Frank Horrigan. And can I take a moment here to say, called it. Did you see this video of mine where I said this was going to go up crazy in price? Who was right? Who's so smart and right about everything that has to do with Magic the Gathering? It's me, baby. Nailed it. Okay, as I said at the beginning of this month, Agent Frank Horrigan is a powerful Titan if you want to be putting counters on things. He just proliferates every time he attacks, plus he comes on a big trampling evasive body. In a deck like this with Sultai colors, casting a bunch of big mana stuff is not a problem at all, especially in the casual format where you don't need this to come out until turn 6 or maybe even 7. So if you were smart and you listened to my other video, then you already have one of these. And if you don't, then no big deal, just like proxy it or something, who cares? Next on the list, we have Vile Boggart, which is a cute little aristocrats piece in the Goblin deck in Limited, but here it serves as a 1-drop body that can chump something and then put a -1 counter on the most tantalizing thing that you want to clone. Bloated Contaminator and Thrumming Bird are both here as well to keep proliferating every time that we hit someone. This is kind of a go tall deck instead of a go wide deck, but we will still have ways to give Volrath and some of our other creatures trample, flying, all of the fun evasion that green and blue gives us access to. So turning those cute little -1 counters into something more lethal is definitely something that you want to do. Blowfly Infestation is a way to keep recurring our counters without dropping like $100 on the Ozolith. This 3 mana enchantment comes down and says anytime Volrath hands out a -1 counter, it is going to be sticking around for much longer than the creature it was attached to, so that you can keep cloning for the whole game, so that you won't have to choose your targets just for your opponents to stick something a lot bigger and scarier on their next turn. Brisbane Battler. This and every other rare that comes into play with -1 counters on it is in our deck, because we don't have to spend our combat trigger putting -1 counters on our own things in order to copy them. You can always put -1 counters on your opponent's creatures. If you can drop this, for 1 mana, you can turn Volrath into a 7/5 with Trample and Ward 2, giving him a little bit of extra protection along with the evasive ability. It also doesn't hurt that this guy becomes a big scary beater later on his own. Flourishing Defenses, Hapatra, and Nest of Scarabs each reward us with bodies as long as we're playing our plan of putting -1 counters on things. Having a bunch of tiny little chump blockers is always nice, especially because we don't always want to kill our opponent's creatures right away. You know, Volrath can only clone something for 1 round at a time. So if you think that your opponent's big scary dragon or angel would be nice to copy multiple turns in a row, you can do it without worrying that you are gonna get trampled over on the crackback. Forgotten Ancient is the 1/1 card that is still worth including in this deck, I think. It just gets so many +1 counters on it, and then at the beginning of your turn, you get to put +1 counters on your favorite creature to copy on your side of the board. This just offers a little bit of flexibility in some sticky situations where you would otherwise be forced to put -1 counters on a creature you control. It's also just a great plan to get Volrath really big so that he can get really out of control with power and toughness while copying some crazy effects that your opponents are throwing at you. Moonshadow is the black creature from Lorwyn Eclipsed that comes into play with -1 counters on it. It starts off as a 1/1 with Menace for 1, but whenever a creature that we control dies, it gets its counters removed from it. This is mostly here to give Volrath evasion so that he has menace and can more easily attack into some sticky boards. Having a big body doesn't hurt, certainly, but at $32, I think this would be one of the first ones I would cut from this list. Next, we have Leech Bonder from back in Shadowmoor. This also comes into play with 2 -1 counters on it, but for 1 mana and untapping it, we can move a counter from a creature we control. So after we've attacked, or on an opponent's turn, you can turn that 1 -1 counter that Volrath gives into another, or just scoot it onto the next creature down the line that you might want to copy. Having Leech Bonder out also can give Volrath the ability to untap himself during an opponent's turn, which means that we can surprise someone with a huge block. Necroskitter is the last creature in this category. It itself has Wither, and whenever an opponent's creature that you wanted to clone in the first place dies, you get to reanimate it on your side of the board. And that's even better than cloning it. Just take it for yourself. He's such an evil proliferating mastermind. Next up, we have a pile of cards for even more removal. This deck does lean pretty control heavy, but some of these are way too good to pass up, and Volrath is, I'm going to be honest, kind of slow. So we have to cope with that by slowing the game down for our opponents as well. Bane Whip Punisher, you probably saw in the previous video. When it enters the battlefield, it puts a -1 counter on something. So that is a free Volrath clone for us. We love seeing that. And then for just 1 mana and sacrificing her, we get to destroy anything with a -1 counter on it. +1 counters do dodge this card pretty well if you're playing against somebody who is just easily putting +1 counters on their whole board and negating the -1 counters. But that also means that Volrath gets to clone them pretty easily as well. So I guess that's kind of cool. My point is, you're only going to dodge one or the other, not both. So if Volrath isn't getting the job done, Bane Whip Punisher certainly will. Contagion Clasp is the small version of our Contagion Engine from earlier. We really want this for the activated ability to proliferate, because as soon as we get one -1 counter on something, we can keep doing it every single turn until that thing dies when we're sick of cloning it. Crumbling Ashes is very similar to Bane Whip Punisher, only it's repeatable. Morningtide had some real heavy hitters. At the beginning of every one of our turns, we get to blow something up for free as long as this sticks around. Grim Affliction is a good little removal spell as well. For 3 mana, it effectively puts 2 -1 counters on something, but it proliferates anything that we want that already has counters on it as well. Lulu, everybody's favorite black mage from Final Fantasy X, can also put a stun counter on anything that dares to attack us, and she also has an activated ability to proliferate, just like both of our clasps. And at the high end for our removal tech, I have Sludge Monster in this list. It is a 5/5 for 5 mana, but it also, similar to Frank Horrigan, has an effect every time it attacks. This will put a slime counter on anything that you want. That means Volrath can copy it. And also, anything with a slime counter on it is a 2/2 with no abilities. This means that with this and Volrath on the field, you can clone the best thing on an opponent's board while also making that creature lose all of its abilities because Volrath will not have slime counters on him. I think the way that that interaction works is very cool. You get to basically silence your opponents and effectively, in a really complicated way, steal their creatures. Okay, by this point in the video, you're probably noticing that a lot of these cards are very expensive. So to fix that problem, we have a bunch of ramp. This category has everything that you would expect to see in any Sultai deck. We have Arcane Signet, Golgari Signet, and Simic Signet, but we also have Astral Cornucopia, Everflowing Chalice, and Fertilid, because they benefit from having more counters on them, and we have a lot of effects that proliferate in the deck. It synergizes with our commander, so we might as well further synergize with it when we are trying to get a ton of mana. Rishkar Pima Renegade also synergizes with Volrath really well. While he does come down and immediately put 2 +1 counters on things, usually this only ever amounts to 2 extra mana dorks on your side of the field, but that last ability of his says that each creature you control with any counter on it can tap for green mana. That means that at the floor, Volrath is giving one of your creatures less power to turn it into a Llanowar Elves on every single one of your turns. As long as this guy sticks around, you will have like a free ramp spell on every one of your turns, guaranteed. Plus, with all of the cards that we talked about earlier, giving counters to all of our creatures, Rishkar might as well be a copy of Enduring Vitality in our deck, specifically. Prismatic Undercurrents is a 4-mana enchantment that lets us drop an extra land per turn. Plus, it gives us a cool Vivid ability since we're playing 3 colors. Once this enchantment comes down, as long as we have our commander out, it is guaranteed to hit the battlefield and rampant growth 3 times immediately, on top of letting us hit another land drop every single one of our turns. That's pretty good value in a 3-color deck. We also have Staff of Completion in this list because it's colorless, it fixes our mana, it proliferates, and I love it. Look at how Hellraiser-y and Clive Barker-y it looks. It's so freaky. Yeah. The last two pieces that we have in our ramp package are good candidates for Volrath to copy. Kami of Whispered Hopes we're not terribly interested in for the Hardened Scales effect that it has at the top of its text box, but it can tap for X mana of any color where X is its power, and if we pay 1 mana, we can turn that 1 mana into 7 on our turn with Volrath. So having the cute little +1 synergies with Rishkar and with Forgotten Ancient are actually worth it. Lastly, we are running an Ornithopter of Paradise because it has flying, and we want to give Volrath flying. That's it. It's just one more little piece of evasion that we can incidentally run into to hopefully finish out a game with commander damage. This is a typical slow-rolling, snowballing tank of a Sultai value list, so we do want a couple of pieces of protection in here. We have Tam, Mindful First Year, because we get access to Mother of Runes now? When the hell did that happen? It also means that Volrath will have protection from blue and black, so a lot of the good removal spells we will just be kind of safe from. Reject Imperfection is a counterspell that proliferates, so it's the only one that I've included in this list. This really is a creature-focused strategy, and we want to focus on making Volrath the best creature on the deck at all times. Mutational Advantage from the Fallout set as well is a way to give, hopefully, your entire board indestructible and hexproof, plus you get to bump up all those counters as it resolves. So that is a pretty good 2-for-1 for us. Look at this big hulky mutant guy. Volrath is just like that. He's kind of alien twinkish, but you know, he really wants to look like this big strong guy. For sure, for sure, for sure. He doesn't feel like hitting the gym, so he's hitting the lab instead, just like every good mad scientist. We absolutely need to draw cards in this list to get Volrath to be somehow faster than everybody else at the table, which is not going to be easy to do. From the new Lorwyn set, we have Flitterwing Nuisance that has a flying body, so that we can copy it with Volrath. It also enters with a counter on it, so we can copy it with Volrath immediately. And for 3 mana, we can remove a counter from it, basically draw a bunch of cards as long as we're going wide. Hopefully we're going to be controlling our opponent's boards so that we are withering away their creatures while building up our own. So this should be a pretty good strategy to, for 4 mana, effectively draw 5 or 6 cards on a turn. Plus, you can keep repeating it by copying it with Volrath every one of your turns. So that's pretty cool also. Next, also from Lorwyn, we have Lochmere, which enters with counters on it. We love that. We can remove a counter from it for just 2 mana to draw a card, or we can remove 2 counters for 3 mana and tap down an opponent's creature. I don't see us doing that in Commander very often, honestly. I think that the card draw is much more effective, which is why it's in that category and not in removal. Spry and Mighty, aside from being just easily the cutest art in the set, is a really good card draw spell for 5 mana. I am treating this like an extra copy of Return of the Wildspeaker, or even something close to Rishkar's expertise in my green decks. So you get to choose 2 creatures you control. You draw X cards, and they get +X/+X, where X is the delta of their powers. So Volrath comes down for 5 mana and immediately has 7 power without us messing with him at all. That means that any of your mana dorks, any of your tiny little creatures in the first few sections that we've gone over already, are going to make this a draw 6 for 5 mana, on top of being a little bit of an overrun. I think that this card is a super easy pick for just under $1. I think that's super worth it. And yeah, Return of the Wildspeaker is a lot more expensive than that, so I would honestly get on this while it is this price. The last of the Lorwyn cards is Sinister Gnarlbark from the Anti-Ool Precon. This lets us draw a card during each one of our turns, but also makes us blight one, which isn't the most problematic thing in the world, seeing as it can draw 3 by blighting itself without really being consequential on our board. We don't really need a tree folk with a huge butt like that, so turning it into a 0/1 before we start drawing cards and sacrificing other things, I think is pretty worth it. Tezzeret's Gambit is in here. It's a classic. You draw 2. You proliferate. I don't gotta say anything about it. You know it. It's Tezzeret's Gambit. The Mysterious Tezzeret's Tricky, Sneaky Plan. We have Morbid Opportunist in this deck as well for an extra card every turn. Hopefully our opponents will be going to combat and some of their things will be dying on their turns as well as ours. So this will turn into 4 cards around instead of just 1. Massacre Girl, Known Killer, was also reprinted in the latest precon. So you have another source of card draw that synergizes pretty well with Volrath putting -1 counters on our opponent's things. We want them to wither and die so that we get card draw, and we can also copy them while they're still alive. It's like we're a vampire sucking the life out of them. Generous Patron from Battle Bond is a really cool tech in this deck, I think. It gets to support 2 as it comes down, so if you happen to have Kami of Whispered Hopes out, that is pretty good to put those counters on your own things. Otherwise, you will probably want to put them on opponents' creatures so that you can instantly clone them with Volrath. Generous Patron also allows us to draw cards every time Volrath blights an opponent's creature. So you get a slow source of removal and card draw all in one. Goldberry River Daughter is really good at manipulating counters on our own things. Let's say Rishkar or Vraska joins up, comes down, and we get counters on our own creatures. Goldberry can tap and move those onto herself. We can proliferate them before or after that happens so that we're spreading Volrath's sinister concoction around the table rather than just keeping it on each individual creature. And then once Goldberry has a bunch of counters on her, she can draw a card and tap by moving a counter from her onto a different creature. Having Goldberry around also makes it easier to copy our own stuff by moving around beneficial counters onto evasive bodies rather than having to be locked into stealing our opponent's things. You want to be flexible in this kind of a strategy because we literally don't know what we will be going up against. And I think that is one of the more fun things about building this list, honestly. You don't know what other people will throw at you, but you do know that you can copy it and make their stuff worse and make your stuff better. Simple math, right? Right? The last of our card draw spells is Thickest in the Thicket, and this is from the Bloomborough Commander deck. It enters, puts a bunch of +1 counters on something. It will put 7 +1 counters on Volrath, in fact, if we are lucky enough to have him out before this. And at the beginning of our end step, draw 2 cards if we control the biggest creature, which, again, having Volrath around and having Forgotten Ancient in the deck, we should be able to do that pretty easily. If you have been following along with the deck list in the description below, then you will have noticed something curious in the deck by now. We have a section dedicated to da combo, baby. I'm da combo, baby. Here is how this works with Volrath. We have, in this category, Evolution Witness, who we like seeing on her own. She can easily get some things back from our graveyard repeatedly with all of the proliferation spells that exist in this deck list. We have Inexorable Tide, which proliferates every time we cast a spell, and then we have these 4 X-cost creatures: Hanger Backwalker, Market Backwalker, Walking Ballista, and Stone Coil Serpent. Crucially, all 6 of these cards are things that we would want to see on their own anyway. None of them are dead without the other combo pieces. So Inexorable Tide lets us proliferate -1 counters. Evolution Witness, like I said, is good for getting things back from the graveyard in our deck full of proliferating spells. Hanger Backwalker is another thing that we can proliferate a lot, get a lot of bodies for when it eventually dies. Market Backwalker has been a great card draw spell every time I've seen it in a commander game. And Stone Coil Serpent is a great target for copying with Volrath, because it has all of these keywords: reach, trample, protection from everything multicolored. We can cast it for 1 mana and then clone it with Volrath to have a big, scary, evasive, protected commander. And Walking Ballista, while we don't have a way to get infinite mana to cast this and immediately win, is a really good option for just grinding out the table or finishing off in the late game when we have too much mana and nobody can win, you can just tap out and say, hey, I cast this spell, I win, right? Right? So that's pretty good as a finisher on its own. The way that these cards combo, though, is much more interesting. So you have to stick Inexorable Tide and Evolution Witness on the battlefield. Then you must have 2 of the X creatures. One needs to be in your hand and one needs to be in the graveyard. You can put it in the graveyard by just casting it for 0 mana, of course, to get this combo started. Then you will need to get a +1 counter on Evolution Witness. You can do this for 2 mana, or you can honestly probably have it happen naturally throughout the game by casting some other spells, like Generous Patron, Rishkar, Forgotten Ancient. Then you cast the other X-cost creature for no mana, triggering Inexorable Tide. Inexorable Tide puts a counter on Evolution Witness, and the creature you just cast goes to the graveyard. Evolution Witness has a trigger to pull the other creature back to your hand from the graveyard. Then you can just repeat this cycle as many times as you want for infinite proliferates, for an infinitely large Evolution Witness, and importantly, infinitely proliferating any -1 counters that might be put on the battlefield. This can win the game by making your board really huge, by clearing out your opponent's board for an alpha strike, or by draining life with an effect like Blood Artist out. It is all very situational, but executing the combo just helps our deck in so many ways. To not include it would be a waste. So that is how we execute the combo. It doesn't provide its own win condition without Blood Artist, Marionette Apprentice, Poison Tip Archer, or something like Obelisk Spider. It's really a shame that none of those creatures would be good in this deck on their own, because otherwise I can include them. Oh, wait a minute. That's right, all of those cards are in this deck because they're all really good. Blood Artist sees any creature die from maybe having a bunch of -1 counters on it, and it gains us life while killing our opponents. Marionette Apprentice can easily drain a bunch of life from our opponents if we decide that our board is not important to winning the game anymore. Obelisk Spider has a weird version of Wither on its own, which means that it gets counters on our opponent's stuff just for attacking, as well as draining life whenever it or our commander puts a -1 counter on something. And Poison Tip Archer also rewards us by draining our opponents out anytime Volrath's -1 counters get to be too heavy of a burden for any one specific creature. Seeing these creatures on their own is also a great way to grind out the game and more slowly turn the tide in your favor. Controlling the board on its own is not always a great plan, so since we have access to black, we might as well do the thing that black does best, which is winning us the game just for killing our opponent's stuff. Persistent Constrictor is also in here as a way to grind our opponents down slowly by draining their life and putting a -1 counter on something they control every single turn. That -1 counter is also good for copying reasons, of course. And the final thing that we could potentially use to win the game with all of these effects that put +1 counters on things is 20-Toed Toad. It gives us a big max hand size, which we don't really care about, but it also gives us a little bit of card draw and extra counters by just doing our regular plan of attacking into all of those weakened creatures. Then, whenever it attacks, if we have gone crazy with card draw or we have gone crazy with counters, maybe by executing the Evolution Witness combo, then 20-Toed Toad can win us the game on his own. He's the best froggy in the whole world. That is the whole deck list as I have built it, but I also have a maybe board of 9 or so cards that you can look at using the link below. There are a couple other things that would maybe get us some more control options, some more graveyard hate, some more +1 counters, so that you can adjust this deck based on what your specific meta looks like. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, everybody. If you want to see more like it, then you can go over to patreon.com/mtgratgirl, just like all of these nice people have done on the screen right now. They are all getting an extra video a month, as well as the satisfaction in knowing that they are supporting an independent creator make the Magic the Gathering content that they want to see in the world. So if you think that that sounds like a good idea for you, then you should go to this web address, which is scrolling past my face at this specific moment. And also, if you want to follow me other places online, I'm on Tumblr occasionally, I'm on Blue Sky sometimes, so you should follow me in those places as well. I've tasted this deck a little bit, and I truly can't believe it's not Blight. It plays exactly like Blight. So if any of you get the chance to play it against a more conch deck, then you should let me know on one of those platforms. I would be very interested in hearing about it. And if you have some other ideas for this recipe to cook up something that is even more like Blight, then you should definitely tell me in the comments below. Also, message at the end for my subscribers. Hey, how's it going? Were your pre-cons fun? Did you have a nice day today? Have you made yourself a nice little cup of tea or something to comfort yourself and your body lately? You should get up and do that. And to the rest of you, why haven't you hit that button yet, huh? You need me to dance around like a jester a little bit more for you? Because I'll do it. I have no self-respect. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a beautiful evening. Bye-bye.